Hi everyone, Teresa Aker here from Success Diaries with Teresa Aker. It's my privilege today to introduce you to Jeff. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Now, Jeff is an attorney at law. He works with Dunlap, Bennett, and Ludwig, PLLC. Let's go back to the beginning, Jeff. How did you get started in being an attorney?
I went to university at Emory, and I realized around junior or senior year that I had a perfectly wonderful education to go on a game show and probably not much of else. So I wasn't really ready to be an adult. And so I figured, what else should I do? I'll go to law school. And I did. And that was 1993. And now it's 2025. And here I am.
Perfect. And here we are today.
Yeah,
And
just,
now you're doing a talk show with me, which is awesome.
that's right. The culmination. Now I can retire now.
Yeah, the bucket list is done, right?
All
So,
over.
so Jeff, let's talk about law. Let's talk about what you do. Now, what kind of an attorney are you?
Okay. As my friend Dan used to say, corrupt. No, I'm kidding. I have done a little bit of just about everything over the lifetime of this career, but mostly in the last decade, I focused on small business, tax exempt entities, like people usually call them not-for-profits, estate plan, IP, mostly trademarks, a little bit of copyright, but mostly trademarks.
Perfect. Okay. So we've all experienced all of those things at one point or another in life. And
Yes.
in fact, I just went through with doing my husband who passed away and my daughter who passed away. I had to do a lot of that. It's
Mm,
actually an emotional time, Jeff.
sure.
And for people who are going through it, one thing I noticed is for anyone here, attorneys like yourself, would you agree? And this is just what my experience was. It would have been a lot easier if my daughter had it all planned out. It's a terrible thing to say, but we have to face these things. And it really wasn't laid out what she wanted. Would you agree that's probably something that people have to start doing with their estate planning?
Yeah, and there's no too early. People always say, I think I'm too young. Maybe it's too early to do this. It's almost like they're explaining it to me, like apologizing to me. I'm like, you never have to explain to the attorney while you're talking to an attorney. And you certainly don't need to explain to the estate planning attorney why you're doing an estate plan. Now, in that conversation, there may be different strategies to employ or different options, and maybe, based on your needs or your goals or both, that something you might need to do something more complicated, or maybe there's ways to simplify it. And everything comes with pros and cons, but at least you get to make a choice as to what those pros and cons are. But yeah, absolutely, any form of planning is better than no planning. If you don't have the estate planning documents for you, your state's law is going to decide what those are. And while I can't speak to most states, so if you've lost capacity, you're incompetent mentis, and you don't have a power of attorney, then somebody's going to have to petition a court to get guardianship of you. And can that be done quickly on an emergency temporary basis? Sometimes. But can the final thing take a long time? Can it be contested just like everything else? Sure. You got two siblings and they all think they should be the guardians and nobody wants to let go. It can happen very easily and not for malicious reasons. If you don't have your medical advance directive, 15 years ago, everyone knew this name, Terry Schiavo. If you don't look it up, that could be all of us. And as far as after death, some people do estate planning almost accidentally, but that's usually when they're married, unless both spouses die at the same time or within quick succession. They might not have a lot of problems, but A, you can't count on that. B, that might not be what you wanted. And C, not all of us do that. I'm on my second marriage. We don't own everything together. In fact, we don't own anything together. So there are easy steps I can take to make that transition more seamless for her and my children from my first marriage, who I also want to provide for in an easy way. And yeah, this is not going to be a lecture on estate planning, but your question is the short answer is yes, much. And depending on how much you want to put into it now and how much of the busy work and the logistics you want to take on yourself now at your pace when you're able, when you are most invested and you know the most about what your inventory is versus somebody else doing it, it's always going to be easier. It's always better. It's like buying a house, but it's new construction. It's undeveloped land and you're starting from everything. You're getting the zoning, you're putting in the infrastructure, you're building the house, you're having all of the wiring put in versus you got a new build or new construction and you're able to buy the staging furniture. It's the difference between turnkey and not turnkey, or very little effort, and what could be a lot of effort that's confusing to somebody who's probably grieving, maybe not ready to do it. Maybe you're 24-year-old, they're an adult, but maybe they're not exactly ready to take that on. Maybe they don't want to. Yeah, yeah, that's why it's called planning, because it's for the future. It's not for tomorrow. And your estate plan can grow and change with you. Your last will and testament doesn't have to be your final last will and testament. Your trust doesn't have to be your last trust. You can amend and restate them, which people do normally. Yeah, it's never too early, extremely important. And as a very practical matter, not just does it just make things easier for the people that come after you or survive you, it's probably also cheaper too, because you're doing everything in today's dollars. And, if you think you're going to live another 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, how much did things cost 50 years ago versus what they cost now? How much did things cost 10 years ago versus what they cost now? Costs of everything go up. Probate costs, taxes, fees, transferring a deed, everything's going to be more expensive in 5 or 10 years than it is today.
I agree with that. Thank you, Jeff. That was really well done. You absolutely laid it all out for us. And the reason I brought it up, it is an emotional time. And I always say to people, definitely plan, because it's not so much, nobody likes to talk about death. I understand that. But for your family, it's so important. It's such an emotional time. And quite often we're hit all of a sudden with that moment, and now we don't know where to go. And when you add emotion to it, Jeff, you're right, 100%. Can we circle back just one question that I
Sure.
had, and perhaps others have? This does come up quite a bit. That you mentioned probate. Can you explain to me the probate, what it is, and the length of time it takes for probate? Could you do that for us?
Listen, so this is where we have to do the usual disclaimer that this is not a substitute for legal advice and your own independent counsel. This is for information and hopefully entertainment purposes.
Thank
Probate's different in every state. I'm licensed in two. Well, one state and the District of Columbia. So I'm licensed in two jurisdictions and one federal jurisdiction.
you. Okay.
Um, First of all, probate is state, though I suppose there are people who could live on federal enclaves, and there may in fact be a federal probate, of which I am unaware of. Probate is basically the process by which your estate gets administered. In most states, if you have a will, that still goes through probate. It's more about what you have and how it's titled and whether you've made transfer on deaths and items like that's probate versus will or not will. But the will is saying how you want things to go. Intestate is when you die without a will, and that's where the state has written your will for you, and usually something called an intestacy statute. So that's why it's called intestate. You were died without a will. So the state statute probably doesn't represent anybody's idyllic estate plan. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it tries to be fair, and your state legislature or in the district of the city council has tried to decide what it should be. There are ways to avoid probate, but probate generally starts something like this. You have to bring a death certificate, and somebody generally needs to bring a copy of the will. Here in Maryland and DC, it is much better to have an original ink signed version, which that in itself sometimes is a problem to find or have. Sometimes in a safe deposit box, and you can't get into a safe deposit box until you're the executor. And so it becomes a circular thing where you submit your photocopy will, and then it has to go through a time before it's recognized and not challenged. So anyway, you present the will. If there are other interested persons, you hopefully get their letters of consent in advance, and you go to the Register of Wills, is what it's called here. We also call it the Orphans Court. The Register of Wills and the Orphans Court are basically side by side. One is the actual court, the other is basically the clerk's office. And depending on where you are, that can be a very easy process or a very difficult process. But generally speaking, you have to get a bond based on what you, and when I say you, the intended personal representative or executor
Yeah.
estimates the estate to be. So you have to get a bond on that. And then there's an ad that goes in the paper, which is the public notice of any interested persons, including creditors, that they have X amount of time to file claims against the estate. Um,
Oh, I see.
yeah, and those things all cost money, and usually the bonding company and the newspaper, you don't have to do the Washington Post. There's local papers you can use, but you have to walk over there and have it done. I don't know if anything's been seamlessly made that you pick XYZ register and they automatically hit a button and email the instructions over. I doubt it very much. So you do that. Uh, so the ad runs for 3 weeks in Maryland and DC. It might be much longer or shorter in other places if it's required at all. 3 months later, you must come in with the full inventory of the estate. Another 3 months, that's the 6 months that ends the period of claims against the estate to be filed. There's differences of opinion on how you handle debts in those cases, or just debts of the estate, because not all debt is a just debt, and as the executor, you're empowered to, you can contest them, you can accept them, you can negotiate them. And then 3 months later, both in Maryland and DC, so at month 9 is the earliest that you can file what's called a administrative accounting of the estate. Basically, think of it as like the court tax return of the estate. So you have your gross estate, all of your expenses, allowable expenses, things that you had to pay, whether it's the court costs, the attorney fee, the cost of the bond, the ad, you had to pay the plumber, you paid the mortgage for 6 months, whatever it is, and then the net estate and who it went to. If the first accounting is your final, it's the first and final estate accounting. If it's not the final one, then every 3 months you file another one, and everyone needs to go to the court's auditor to either approve it or question it, and that can cause wrinkles as well. But if it's approved and it is the final, that's not always going to be a final. Let's just say you put a house up for sale. The kids have their own places to live. The house is for sale. The market isn't so good. You're not getting the price you want. You keep it up for sale. That could easily last more than 9 months.
I
Doesn't
agree.
always, yeah, it doesn't always have to be something nefarious or complex to keep things frozen for a while and to continue having to make those mortgage payments and property taxes and things like that, eating up into the estate. And you can't allow waste to be committed. So you have to have the grass cut and the trees trimmed and the gutter spouts cleaned and all sorts of stuff like that. And then there's always somebody in the family who needs the money more than someone else, who thinks that the executor is doing a bad job of doing it. And that can cause its own kind of litigation. For a whole host of reasons, planning is another good reason. But anyway, point is, when the administrative accounting becomes the final administrative, whether it's the first or the 10th, and the auditor approves it, the court signs off on it, probate is closed. Then there might be a trustee over assets, over the funds of minors, or maybe not even minors, and that continues, but the executor's job is over.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeff. That was well laid out as well. I really always had a comfort level that lawyers like yourself are the people really we should be reaching to get through all of this, because it is a lot, and it's a lot for anyone who hasn't gone through the legal side of it, and it's overwhelming and perhaps even intimidating for a lot of people. So thank you for clarifying that, and thank you for what you do. So Jeff, you mentioned a lot of fields that you do. What's your favorite area of law? So we'll get off the inheritance part and let's go with what your favorite, or is that your favorite? What is your best
I
part of
mean,
doing in law?
any time where I can untie a knot that other people haven't been able to untie for them, that always feels good. And it happens shockingly too much, even when they've spoken to other attorneys. So that feels good because I love me some me. As far as the area of law, it's very results oriented. So I don't want to put an area of law above another. I
Sure.
mean, trademarks is probably the sexiest, the most interesting, the most fun. I really do like when I've spoken to someone when they're just starting their idea of a business and they just form their LLC or their corporation or their joint venture agreement. And then over the months and years, I'm still hearing from them. I'm still talking. And 5, 6 years later, then they have investors and things are growing and they're talking about franchising or selling. That is really fun to watch somebody's journey like that and to know that you've played some part in it, especially when you get them set up correctly at the beginning and they listen, they built the proper foundation, because it's always the business owners. It's their vision, it's their efforts, it's their ability to make more money than they spend and things like that. But the foundation does help. And listen, there's always luck involved too. But when someone's listened to everything you say and they keep coming back, you've done something right, and that's fun. That's probably rewarding, because usually, like when someone calls an attorney, it's generally for bad news.
Yeah.
And even if it's for good news, like I'm having a baby, how do I get do what? There's still a price tag. I want to start a business. What's the price tag? Even with good news, there's a price tag to it. Nobody's as excited to pay the attorney's fees as they are to buy their Lamborghini or whatever it is. Yeah, I'm going to buy this $300,000 $100,000 car, but look how good it looks.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I love that you want to help people do businesses. And when I get to do the show, I talk about all the new businesses. I talk about the experiences people have had. And I love that you want to help people get started, do it the right way, get them launched, and then they don't have any pressures. Then they know, okay, I'm started the right way. I can grow my business. And if I have any questions along the way, I have someone that'll help me. And I think that's terrific, Jeff. Thank you so much for doing that for everyone. Growing a business. I think a lot more people today are doing businesses, especially online. So that brings me to another question. When people start their businesses online, do you help them with that? Is there a lot more to do with businesses started online, or is that just totally separate?
No, actually, in my case, it's very much related because we are a supplementary aid for LegalZoom. A couple of other plans as well, though I'm not associated with the other plan. I think they're fairly limited. It's like the Airline Pilots Association, and then that's mostly aviation law, of which I'm rather ignorant of. But yeah, so obviously there's a million different ways that you could form a company, and there's probably a million different services. So I can't really speak to
Yeah.
the pros and cons or any of them. Everything with online, like I said, everything is pros and cons. You're having an efficiency, you're usually paying a flat fee. You might have different options as to the level of service and the level of things they do for you and the reminders. But I found that the LegalZoom product itself, it's a great value. The members I've talked to are generally extremely satisfied with it. The people I talk to who have bad stories usually started someplace else and then found their way over to LegalZoom and to our firm as a result. But LegalZoom does their own stuff. We do ancillary stuff, but there's other things that isn't one size fit all. So like their standard operating agreement, it's perfect for a one-person LLC, or maybe if it's a spousal team or something like that. But in other cases, it probably needs to be beefed up a little bit. And I'm not going, just because we get to work from LegalZoom, I'm not going to say, I don't think that operating agreement covers enough things through. Here's what it's missing, in my view, and here's the things you need to address. It's also where it gets tricky because you might be talking to two or three different people, and they all should have really their own attorneys at a certain point. So you have to not advocate for anybody and then say, these are the things I would talk to. You should all talk to your own attorneys and see if you can come up with a solution and draft language, and then we can review it again under your LegalZoom membership, representing the LLC as a whole. Sort of like when you go to settlement, the attorney is there, but they're representing the transaction. They're not representing the buyer. They're not representing the seller. They're really representing the bank and making sure that the transaction looks clean. So they'll answer questions, but they're not there to necessarily help anyone in particular unless it's to get the transaction done, whether it's that day or in 30 days or whatever the case might be. Um, so you have to ride that line a little bit. But yeah, I find the results to be, you know, quite good. And I think that it works. In this age, you have to adapt. Everyone's doing things online and electronically and quickly. So if your lawyers say, wow, you're doing things online, you're definitely gonna have malpractice. No, you're not. It's just stop taking everything so seriously. Articles of organization are not that complex. They're rather simple. If you put too much in them, it's probably a mistake anyway. I see ones where they put everybody's name, they put their percentages on that. In Maryland, DC, you don't have to do that. Why do you don't even need your name on there? The incorporator is usually, your lawyer, or if you use LegalZoom, they have their agent who signs it. One of the reasons to do this is for some level of anonymity. Why would you put your names and your percentages there? If you're being sued, it comes out in discovery anyway, but this is non-public information. It's that you're not a publicly traded company. Again, no, there's no one size that fits all, but I find it to be a generally good product, and I believe that the lawyers that work with it, like myself, are going to tell someone if it's the right fit for them or where they need to have it augmented, or if in this case it's just, I talk to people with estate plans and go, listen, your needs or your situation is beyond this. You need something more. Now they're still entitled to a discounted rate under that particular policy, which is great. But easy for me to say it's great. They thought they were going to pay X amount of hundreds of dollars for a particular trust. Turns out they need a more robust estate plan. So it's not great in their mind, but we have to live with our ethics as well.
Wonderful. Jeff, thank you so much again. You're very knowledgeable. shared everything and you've answered all the questions just so well. So thank you so much. Jeff, if people want, I'm going to say your firm again, it's Dunlop, Bennett and Ludwig PLLC. If
Mhm.
someone wanted to reach out to you today, I'm certainly going to have your information here. If they wanted to reach out to you, what's the best place to reach you, Jeff?
They won't reach me today. It's President's Day, so don't expect to hear from me because I'm off. Yeah, Dunlop Bennett and Ludwig PLLC.
Okay.
I mean, but we have a wonderful website. There's a contact us. You can call the main number. There's an 800 number. Afraid I don't know it offhand, but
Okay.
703-777-7319.
Okay.
We have attorneys licensed in at least 30 states. I know somebody just got licensed in Minnesota, so maybe that's 31. We have offices in Seattle, Chicago. There's 3 offices in Virginia. There's people in Delaware, in New York, in Georgia, so and roundabout as well. So we do a lot of stuff. We're just got some major contracts with the state of New York and the state of Virginia. So probably IP and IP litigation is probably what we're most famous for or most well known for. So yeah, so if you've got patents, trademarks, or business stuff, but we have an estates and wealth department. You know, it's fancy when it's called estates and wealth, not estates and trusts. We have real estate folks. We have white collar criminal defense attorney. Not, I was going to say guy, that sounds wrong. Immigration, tax attorney, a lot of federal contracting stuff, debarments, a lot of FARS folks. And then there's me. I'm the generalist. I'm the king of miscellaneous.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jeff. Now, I have one more question. Will you
Yeah,
come back and talk to us again, Jeff?
sure, of course. Like I said, I love me some me, of course. I'm on a promotional tour.
Awesome. I'm very happy that you came on today. I'm very grateful. You've helped answered all the questions. You're a very nice person, and I'm very glad I met you, Jeff. Thank you. And we will have you back. Now, to everyone, I will have Jeff's information here. I'm Teresa Aker from Success Diaries with Teresa Aker. Please subscribe to my channel. Give me a thumbs up, all of those things. And Jeff, wherever his social media is, please go there. I'm going to make sure it's all here for you. I hope you're having a great day, and I look forward to talking to you all very soon. Thank you again. Bye-bye.